Have you ever noticed that your biggest enemy might actually be inside you? Sadhguru teaches us that the toughest battle we face is with our own inner voices. While we're busy fighting the outside world, we often forget that the chaos starts within. In this video, you'll learn how to turn your mind into your greatest ally and finally win this battle once and for all. Ready to take the first step? The intellect is like a sharp knife, super useful, but dangerous if mishandled. Imagine trying to slice a soft loaf of bread without knowing what you're doing. You could end up smashing the bread or even cutting yourself. That's exactly how many people deal with their minds. Sadhguru explains that when used correctly, the intellect can untangle the knots of confusion in life. For instance, learning to analyze situations without letting emotions take over is a solid first step for avoiding self-sabotage. But here's the catch. People often use their intellect against themselves. Ever spent hours replaying a mistake from the past or obsessing over something someone said? That's like stabbing yourself over and over with that knife. Instead, why not use it to create something positive? Here's a practical tip. Try listing your important decisions for the day and ask yourself, will this get me closer to where I want to be in 5 years? This simple practice helps train your intellect to work for you, not against you. The key is consistent practice. Just like nobody becomes a master chef overnight, nobody is born with a perfectly trained intellect. It takes patience and a willingness to learn. You can start right now with small steps, like identifying mental patterns that no longer serve you. But here's something to think about. What happens when we lose control of what's happening inside our own minds? The human mind is like a room full of echoes. Every thought sends out ripples that can either help or harm us. Sadhguru highlights how our inner narratives can turn a simple situation into an emotional nightmare. Think about that day when you were convinced everyone was judging you just because someone gave you a weird look. That kind of internal chatter is what creates unnecessary confusion and suffering. So, how do you quiet those voices? First, you've got to notice them. Anytime you catch yourself spiraling into negative thoughts, stop and ask, is this actually true, or is my mind blowing it out of proportion? A practical way to tackle this is to write down your most persistent thoughts and then jot down a more rational version next to them. Often, seeing them on paper makes you realize just how unrealistic they can be. This simple practice can weaken the grip of those mental narratives. Still, it's not about turning off your mind, but understanding it. When you see your mind as a stubborn child screaming for attention, you'll start dealing with it more patiently. But what happens when it's not just your mind working against you, but you're also living in a world that encourages unchecked overuse of the intellect? Let's find out in the video. Watch now to transform your relationship with your mind and take charge of your life. We live in the most comfortable era in human history, yet oddly enough, more people are struggling with unhappiness than ever before. Sadhguru explains that this happens because our well-being isn't determined by what's around us, but by how we use our minds. Think about all the innovations designed to simplify life: smartphones, virtual assistants, even self-driving cars. Yet, anxiety and stress are only on the rise. One of the biggest issues is how we misuse our intellect in the middle of all this comfort. Imagine driving a high-performance sports car without knowing how to handle it. It's a recipe for disaster, no matter how advanced the car is. In the same way, if we don't know how to consciously manage our intellect, all the modern comforts can turn into a mental trap. Try this. Next time you're relaxing at home, take 5 minutes to think about what you truly need to feel at peace, beyond the gadgets and technology surrounding you. Material progress is amazing, but it's not the answer to human suffering on its own. It's like building a fancy house without a solid foundation. It can collapse at the first sign of trouble. So, how do we find a balance between enjoying external comforts and managing the chaos within? Sadhguru always says that human well-being is an inside job. Think about it. What's the point of living in a luxurious house if there's chaos inside your mind? That's why, even with all these material achievements, people still struggle with stress, anxiety, and dissatisfaction. The key is learning to manage what happens within us instead of trying to control everything around us. A practical starting point is to notice small moments of frustration throughout your day. For instance, if someone cuts you off in traffic and it ruins your mood, ask yourself, was it their action or my reaction that caused this feeling? Just pausing to reflect like this can be life-changing. Sadhguru suggests that the real solution isn't fixing the traffic, it's fixing how you respond to it. This might sound challenging, but it's incredibly freeing. Once you realize you can choose how to respond to life instead of reacting on autopilot, something shifts within you. And that brings up a bigger question. How can we take full responsibility for how we feel without blaming others or the world around us? Taking full responsibility for your experience of life is like learning to tame a wild horse. Sadhguru teaches that every emotion, thought, and sensation you feel is created within you, even when you insist on blaming the outside world. Sounds like a lot to take on, right? Maybe, but it's also incredibly empowering. Because if you're the one creating the problem, you're also the one who can create the solution. Take a simple example. You're standing in a long line and start feeling irritated. The line is just a fact, but your irritation? That's something you're creating. If you pause and observe, you can turn that moment into something productive. Maybe listen to a calming song or do a quick meditation. Small choices like these remind you that you have control over your experience, no matter the circumstances. This mindset shift isn't about blaming yourself, it's about empowering yourself. When you fully understand that change is in your hands, you'll start to see your life different. And it leads to an even deeper question. What would you do if you realized you could create your own peace, no matter how chaotic the world around you gets? If you recognized that you're the one creating your own peace, you'd see that nothing outside of you has the power to control how you feel. Imagine being in the middle of an argument, but keeping your mind as calm as a still lake. It doesn't mean ignoring what's happening around you. It means choosing to respond consciously instead of reacting impulsively. This level of self-mastery can completely transform the way you live. Sadhguru compares it to being the driver of your own car. If you're in full control, you can navigate smoothly, even on bumpy roads. But if someone or something else is in control, you'll get tossed around. Here's a practical exercise to start. Practice self-awareness throughout the day. Take a moment to check in with yourself and ask, is this feeling coming from within me or from something outside? Over time, this practice becomes second nature and incredibly freeing. This kind of shift doesn't happen overnight, but here's the good news. Every small step in the right direction brings benefits. When you begin to accept that everything happening inside you is your responsibility, the chaos outside loses its power to throw you off balance. Now that you know the tools to win this internal battle, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you keep letting those inner voices control you, or will you take the reins of your mind? Sadhguru reminds us that true transformation begins the moment we take responsibility for what's happening within. Take a moment to reflect. How would your life change if the internal chaos disappeared and you found peace, no matter what's going on around you? Doesn't that sound amazing? Start small, notice your thoughts, train your intellect, and watch the difference it makes. Change begins with just one step. If you're ready to keep exploring these ideas and transforming your reality, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and stay connected. Let's take this journey together and create the life you truly want.